Hi everyone, welcome back to Sumi Learns. If you're new here, my name is Sumi and lately I've been filming a lot of content around reading and books, and today I'm going to be filming a video called the Mid-Year Book Freakout Tag. Technically, most people in the reading space have filmed this video like in June, early June, because that's the middle of the year, but then as usual I am very late to this tag and to this trend, but I still thought it'd be really fun because I think the questions are just like very fun, so why not film it? And technically, I guess I'm just early for next year's book freakout tag. So yes, without further ado, I'm going to answer the questions. So the first question is, what is the best book that you've read in 2022? So if you've followed my reading journey for any amount of time, you'd know that the book series that got me into reading and one that I absolutely love is the Selection series. But today I'm going to try and change it up, switch it up, so I don't always keep repeating how much I love the Selection series. So for best book that I've read, I have two because I cannot decide. The first one is By Your Side by Casey West. Oh my goodness. I think I read this book, for sure I read it in less than 24 hours. Like I just sat down and I read it pretty much in one go, very quickly. So By Your Side by Casey West follows a girl named Autumn who is stuck in a library with a guy named Dax, and Dax is just like this closed off guy. I'm sure when you hear that synopsis you're like, okay, like that shouldn't be that amazing, but I tell you I think what the author did that I so loved was, for one, the main character Autumn, she struggles with anxiety. She has an anxiety disorder, and that was like a huge part of this book. She had panic attacks, and she also was struggling with how she should tell her friends about like her anxiety disorder, and I think it was just done beautifully, and I just love that that was a big part of the book. I think he added so much more depth to the book, and even getting to see the way that Dax like cared for her in the library, and even he's just like this closed off character that we got to learn a bit more about. Oh, that book was just perfection and I loved it so much. So a second favorite from this year is All That It Takes by Nicole Deese. I gave this a 5-star. I like love this so much. So All That It Takes by Nicole Deese follows a woman named Val. She's a single mom who moves across the country with her 10-year-old son, and she moves for a job, and she begins living in this new town in the same apartment complex as her best friend's brother. And she's also an aspiring filmmaker, so we follow her journey through like this filmmaking journey. And a big part of this book is also her disability, which I loved. I think he added so much more depth to the book. It was beautiful to read about. And also the fact that I would say, at least, I don't think it was mentioned specifically, but at least based on the way it looks, it seems like Val, the main character, might have some form of social anxiety. So I also love that is explored. I'm sure you can see a thread between my favorite books. The anxiety is a big part of both of them, which I think is so cool. I love that. And this book also follows the point of view of Val's best friend's brother, who is Pastor Miles. So Pastor Miles is someone who in this book, because of some situations, his role as a pastor suddenly changes. So we're kind of following him coming to terms with his new role. But yeah, I think this book is beautiful. I shed tears, I smiled like crazy. Just so many beautiful moments in the book. I love both of these characters so much. Yeah, 10 out of 10, I recommend. So the second question is, what is the best sequel that you've read so far in 2022? And I thought for so long and so hard about this question, but to be honest, I don't think I've read any sequel. Maybe to come to me later, but I don't think I have, which actually is a terrible habit that I have with reading. No matter how much I love the first book, I almost never read the second book, because I don't know, I guess I get tired of the world and like the same characters, and I want a change. And then typically when I pick up a different book, I just forget about the other book. So yeah, I don't think I've read a sequel. Please feel free to recommend me books where like it's so good that I will have to read the sequel. Then the third question is, what is a new release that you haven't read yet but you do want to read? Hi, editing Sumi here. I decided that I'm going to change my response to this question because I just learned of a new release that is coming out that I'm super interested in. And this new release is by Emiko Jean. She's the author of Tokyo Ever After and Tokyo Dreaming. I've spoken about both those books on my channel, and I'll pop up the video where I spoke about them somewhere. I think it might be here actually. But yeah, so in this book, the name of this book is Mika in Real Life, I believe, and it sounds so super interesting to me. In this book, the main character, she's like really struggling in life. There's just things just aren't going according to plan for her right now. And then all of a sudden, her daughter, who she had given up for adoption, shows up in her life. And I guess the book follows like her relationship with her daughter and like just getting to know her daughter better and also getting to know her daughter's single father. So I assume there's going to be like a romance of some form in this book, and I don't know, it sounded really cool. I'll also pop up the like official description because I know I'm not doing it justice. But yeah, back to Sumi. And then the second question is, what is your most anticipated release for the year 2022? So I actually don't really keep track of like when books are coming out, so I don't have that many books that I'm anticipating. But one book that I did find out is coming out in December of this year is Holly Jackson's newest book. So Holly Jackson is the person who wrote A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. Again, I haven't read the whole series, but just based on the first book, I'm like, wow, I loved her writing style. I love the plot, I love the characters, I think it was creative. I just think it was a very like well done book. So she's coming out with a new book called 5 Survive, and I'm like, this sounds exciting, I would love to read it. So that's probably one that I'm excited for, but it's all the way in December, so I'm going to have to wait for a while. And then the fifth question is, what is the biggest disappointment that you've read this year? And for me, this one was actually very easy. Sadly, it was very easy, and I'll have to say that my answer is The Inheritance Games. So when I read this book when I was just getting into reading very early in the year, maybe like February, I think I read this book, and everyone on TikTok, on YouTube had been gushing about this book. They were like, if you're in a reading slump, read this book. So The Inheritance Games follows a girl who is just surprisingly told that she's the one who is going to inherit like all the money and like the estate and everything of this like man who just passed away. But then she didn't know the man, she had never heard of him. But then a condition to inherit all of his things was that she had to move in to his house and live with his, I believe, how many grandsons? Live with his grandsons anyways, and like live with his family for I believe a year before she can inherit all of like his stuff. So she does move in with him, and a big part of this book is solving puzzles to figure out why he left all like his inheritance for her. So I will say this book put me in a terrible reading slump. Reading this book felt like it literally was like pulling teeth. It was painful. It actually was physically painful to read this book, but I just wanted to finish it. Why I wanted to finish it, I don't know. I guess then I was still like, no, I don't want to DNF a book. Now I DNF books left and right. But then I was like, no, I have to finish it since I started, but it was physically painful. So hard to read. But also, like, the premise of this book just made no sense to me. The point about the puzzles, I just didn't understand why there were puzzles that she had to solve. It just didn't seem realistic to me. I'm like, why would this man who passed away leave so many puzzles? To me, I just couldn't get into it. But also, there was a love triangle in this book, and a love triangle is a trope that I typically do not like, but sometimes I'll give it a chance. But in this one, I just couldn't even see a difference between the two boys that she was trying to decide between. I felt like I didn't see any character development. I didn't see any distinguishing qualities about them. I was like, I didn't even understand why she liked them. I felt like she barely interacted with them. I just did not understand it at all. So those were just some of the problems that I had, and which is why I would say it's one of the biggest disappointments of this year. I went in with such high hopes and I was super disappointed. And then the next question is, what is the biggest surprise of this year? And I have to say the biggest surprise is a book that I just finished, which is Red Queen. I just talked about this book in my July wrap-up, so you're welcome to go watch that one to like hear me talk about it more. In Red Queen, just as a quick synopsis, in this world there are people who bleed red and then people who bleed silver blood, and the people who bleed silver blood are like the ruling class and they also have powers, and then the people who bleed red are like they are the oppressed class in this world. But then there is a girl who the ruling class finds out that she bleeds red but she actually has powers, so then they try to cover this up. So we kind of just follow her journey through this. There's also a romance like that ensues in this book, and I don't know what it was about this book, but I just had so much fun reading it. I think I genuinely was so surprised by how much I enjoyed this book. I still am surprised by how much I enjoyed this book. I don't know why it was, but I loved it. I thought it was such an enjoyable read. Highly recommend. You can hear me talk about it more in my July reading wrap up. And then the next question is, who is a favorite new author? And I already mentioned this author, but I think my answer has to be Nicole Deese. I think her books are just fantastic. So I've read 3 of her books now. She's not new, by the way, to writing. She's just new to me because I only started reading her books this year. I've read 3 of her books. I've read All That Really Matters, I've read All That It Takes, and I've read Before I Called You Mine. And my ranking is All That It Takes, then All That Really Matters, and then Before I Called You Mine. I'm still trying to get through her backlog and read more books. And I know she has a new book coming out, and actually the story, I believe, is based in San Francisco, which is where I live, which I just think is so cool. So I'm really excited to read it, but I think it comes out next year, not this year. But yeah, either ways, I think she's a fantastic author. I love the way she incorporates faith into her books, but not in a cheesy, forced way. Then the next question is, who is your newest fictional crush? So actually, when I finish reading a book, I almost always forget the content of the book, and I forget the characters in the book. So for me to remember a character, that means that character is very special to me. And for this one, I have to say, and I don't want to be a broken record because I keep mentioning the same books, but his name is Dax in By Your Side. Goodness, I actually love this character. For me, actually, the part that stands out most about him is how he cared for Autumn, the female main character, the way he cared about her anxiety. He was such a gentleman, such a good guy. I love. And then my other fictional crush has to be Prince Maxon in the Selection series. And I feel like everybody knows this. Everybody loves Prince Maxon. If you do not, I don't know how to help you, but yeah, Prince Maxon was amazing. My favorite saying by him, which I think the internet is also obsessed with, is "Break my heart, break it 1,000 times. It was only yours to break." I'm tearing up. And I know for people who haven't read the book, they're probably like, okay. But trust me, in the context of the book, that quote just hits. It hits different. It's very cool. And then the 10th question is a book that made you cry. And for this one, I for sure have to pick a memoir, which is Happy People Are Annoying. Happy People Are Annoying, I also spoke about it in my July reading wrap-up, is Josh Peck's memoir. Josh Peck is the guy who acted in Drake and Josh. And I just loved this book. I think he just spoke to me in so many ways. When he spoke about his growing up with a single mother and his addiction story, there were just so many hard things that he spoke about. I literally was listening to this book as an audiobook, and I was listening to it at work, and you literally just see me tearing up. It was so awkward, but this book was precious. Highly recommend as well. And then the next question is a book that made you happy. So for this one, I think I'll just pick any Casey West book, to be honest. All the Casey West books that I read, even those that I didn't love, for the most part, they made me really happy. I think Casey West books are just cotton candy in word form. Beautiful books. By Your Side, obviously, is one of my favorites. I also really liked The Fill-In Boyfriend, The Distance Between Us. I might actually do a Casey West book ranking at some point, but I just have been trying to get through all her books, and then I'll do a ranking. Also random, but did you know that she actually wrote I think it was a young adult paranormal book? I think it's so out of, because all her books are contemporary romances, so I'm very shocked. But yeah, she wrote a book, Pivot Point, so I actually have that, so I plan to read it at some point. And then the next question is, what is the most beautiful book that you've received or bought this year? And I really didn't know how to answer this question, actually. I think it was kind of hard. I'm literally looking at my bookshelf right now and trying to figure out what is the most beautiful book that I've bought. I do think A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is a beautiful book cover. I like the way it looks. Apart from that, to be honest, I don't know. I feel like I can do ugliest book cover, and I feel like for sure Shatter Me takes the cake. Shatter Me cover, both of them, because I know there are 2 covers. I got this one, I'll pop it up on the screen, but I also think this one just looks terrible. So for that I can answer, I don't know who selected those book covers, but no. Oh, another book cover that I think looks just not good at all is Never Never by Colleen Hoover and someone else, I can't remember. Even just the like writing. I don't know if it was just the copy that I got, but like the letters were so tiny. It feels stressful to read that book. I don't like that cover. No. So I didn't exactly answer that question, but I flipped it and I answered a different question. And then finally, the last question is, what is a book that you need to read before the end of this year? To be honest, I don't know that I need to read any book by the end of this year, but a book series that I really want to at least read the first book in is the Percy Jackson series, because everybody is like, I feel like Percy Jackson was, everybody already read it like years ago, so I'm extremely late to this, and I've actually never read the books, I've never seen the movies, and I want to finally be able to say, yes, I know what you're talking about when you talk about like the demigod and the camp half-blood. I don't know. Yeah, I want to be onto that trend. So yeah, that's about it for my mid-year book freakout tag. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found one book at least that you would consider reading. Please leave down below books that you love or books that you would like to read at some point. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.